I know I've mentioned accommodationists before, but this is one of the first videos I've covered where accommodationism is absurdly on display. So, to define my terms, an accommodationist is someone who ostensibly knows better, yet doesn't care enough to oppose clearly wrong points of view, regardless of the consequences. And here, Coach Red Pill shows that he treats everyone like a child who's inherently beneath him, because clearly to him, everyone is inferior. Because that's not clickbaity or anything. Nah.
Christmas is fast approaching, and I had a little incident a couple of days ago that was, well, quite frankly, it sort of rattled me.
That's because you're not a skeptic and you don't have an intellectual commitment to reality. Now, that might sound a little funny to say, but I firmly believe that's the truth, and it's something I've said in virtually every video. You have to be willing and able to accept reality as it is, not as you wish it was. You can't make excuses for why you should accept an unsupported fantasy because it's more emotionally comforting than demonstrable fact. But I suspect this is only going to get worse. Let's see.
You see, my daughter is 4 years old, and I noticed that she was looking despondent. I mean, it frightened me.
Proving that you've got very little experience with children or as a parent, because children look despondent all the time. They're not emotionally mature enough to be able to weather the peaks and valleys of their emotional existence. Kids pout. Deal with it.
You know, when a 4-year-old child looks despondent, you sit up and take notice.
Only if it's part of a trend. You can certainly comfort them when they're feeling down, but to act like it's the end of the world? That's just bad parenting.
Right? So I went up to her and I asked her, what's wrong? What's the matter? And she looked at me with these big, beautiful eyes of hers. And she said that she had been over playing at her little friend's house, and the little friend's older brother, a 10-year-old boy, had intimated that Santa Claus didn't exist.
Welcome to reality, because Santa Claus doesn't exist. And by the time you're 10 years old or so, you ought to have figured that out. Now let's be honest, 10-year-old kids, they're not the best at keeping secrets either. You should have expected that sooner or later, someone's going to let the cat out of the bag. So how do you handle it? Well, let's see.
I mean, oh boy, right? My daughter, understood the notion of Santa Claus when she was about a little under 3 years of age. And last year, she was all looking forward to Santa Claus. And she was very worried last year of being on Santa's nice list, not the naughty list, right? And so she would always do things to be on the nice list. And she'd ask us, I'm doing this, so I'm going to be on the nice list, right?
And I'm sure you were encouraging that as a means to get your daughter to behave. Which is exactly why a lot of people push religion. Because when you threaten them with negative repercussions for behaving badly, however badly happens to be defined, you get people who would do what you want them to do. And you're benefiting from it. Go figure.
Santa Claus was a big deal to her, right? And here was this 10-year-old little punk telling her that Santa Claus didn't exist. And she was looking at me for answers, right?
And you had a chance to prove that you were trustworthy, that you would tell her the truth no matter what, and something tells me you're going to fail the test.
So I knelt down to be at eye level with her, and I leaned forward and looked her in the eye with a furrowed brow. And I held her gaze.
And lied to her face. Just like a jackass.
And I said to her, "Of course he exists. I talk to him all the time. Yeah, I do. I talked to him a couple of days ago. I have his number on speed dial. Wait, let's see if... Oh, wait, it's kind of late in the North Pole. You know, Santa is probably sleeping. Santa and Mrs. Claus and the little elves, they're all probably sleeping right now, so I'm not going to call him now. But, you know, I'll call him tomorrow, and if I don't catch him, look, Christmas Eve, when Santa comes over, we'll stay up and we'll talk to him, right? Yeah, of course he exists. Santa Claus. Yes, of course, dear, he exists. Absolutely. I'm telling you that he exists.
You know what you sound like? A cult leader, a scam artist, a con man. Think about that for a minute, because you're being a terrible parent. You know, my kids believed in Santa Claus back in the day, but we never introduced the concept to them, and we never reinforced it. We never lied to them. When they eventually came to us and asked if Santa was real, we said no. We really didn't try to hide it either. Sure, we wrote "From Santa" on some of their presents, but we wrapped them in all the same paper, we signed them using the same handwriting, and we sure didn't use the Santa Claus myth against our kids to get them to be moral or do their chores. When they found out, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't traumatic. We said, hey, you're going to get the same number of presents as you always did. We'll just put our names on them instead of Santa, because they all came from us in the first place. Santa Claus is something fun that society does for kids. Honesty is something parents owe their children.
Okay. The weight, I could see the weight coming off her shoulders, you know? And from that despondent look, this big, bright sunrise of a smile burst out, and she ran off to play, and that was that. Emergency solved.
No, you've just taught your daughter that you're a lying scumbag. And that's going to come back to haunt you later, I'm sure.
Some of you, I'm sure, are saying, well, you should have told her the truth, you know, that Santa Claus does exist. And to you, I answer, you know, what kind of a complete asshole would I be to strip away the illusions of a 4-year-old girl?
One who's honest and actually cares about reality and wants to raise a child who also cares about the real world. Because eventually, you're going to have to be honest with her, and she's going to resent that you lied to her. You crossed the line from playing along with a little fun cultural myth to out and out lying to her face.
Her belief in Santa Claus, on the one hand, is perfectly harmless. And, you know, she's not doing anything because of her belief in Santa Claus.
Lying again, I see. Because you already said that she was very concerned with being on the nice list and was doing things she might not otherwise do just because she's afraid of not getting presents. Now, as I said before, you're benefiting from her delusion because she's doing her chores and behaving well or whatever it is, but you're getting something out of promoting this belief in a myth. So it behooves you to promote it even though you know it's a lie. You're sounding more and more like the clergy all the time.
And on the other hand, it actually does some good, because every year she looks forward to Christmas. Every year she's conscientious of staying on Santa's, nice list and not on the naughty list, right? You know, it does a lot of good.
So you even admit this is not a neutral belief. In fact, if you wanted to push her into doing something evil, you could. All you have to do is tell her that Santa wants her to do bad things. The irrational belief will just do the rest.
And it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't have any really negative effect.
That depends. Doing good things for bad reasons taints those good things. A parent is supposed to raise their children to be moral for good reasons, for rational reasons, to understand how morality actually works in the real world and how to behave appropriately. Being good because you're afraid of the imaginary consequences of being bad, because you're afraid of not getting any presents or of going to some imaginary hell, that's not a reality-grounded moral sense. You are a bad parent.
When she was little, when she was 2.5, 3, and she had the concept of Santa Claus, and she became very self-conscious about staying on the nice list, she would do all kinds of things to be on the nice list, and thinking to herself and saying that she wanted to be on the nice list, right? But those attitudes and actions and behaviors became just a natural part of who she is. And you could say that, this is a mind control or some crap like that. That with the illusion of Santa Claus, we made her behave like a good little girl. But so what? Okay. At the end of the day, all that matters is, she's helping around the house and she doesn't beat up her annoying little brother. Okay. That's the important thing, right?
All that matters is that you get what you want, no matter what deceptions you have to pull on your kid, and you're apparently proud of that. You prick.
Right. Now, Santa Claus and God, they're two big white guys with big white beards.
And neither of them are real.
Up in the sky, both of them.
Santa Claus isn't up in the sky except when he's on his sleigh. Do you not even know the myth that you're pushing on an impressionable little mind?
I mean, they're practically twins. What kind of an asshole would you have to be to strip away somebody's belief in God?
First off, that's not even possible. I can't force someone to stop believing in anything. But secondly, belief in God is demonstrably harmful. Unlike belief in Santa, well, unless you're using it to force your kids to behave. Adults with imaginary friends ought not be acceptable, any more than adults who believed in Santa Claus. There comes a time when people need to grow the hell up and deal with reality. It's a disservice to people not to tell them that what they believe is idiotic and false.
Especially, if they're not that sophisticated, not so intelligent as you, perhaps.
So religion's okay if it keeps the lesser people in check. Gotcha.
You see, I myself am an atheist, right? I don't believe in God. I recognize that as a human being, my understanding of the universe is quite limited.
Which is not a license to just make things up because it's easier and more emotionally comforting.
But I do not believe that there is some large white man with a white beard up in the sky controlling everything.
Why do I get the feeling that this guy is a dyed-in-the-wool, far-left regressive jack-off? The holier-than-thou, I'm better than you, but I deign for my place at the top of the pile to allow you little people to believe silly things because it makes you feel better and makes you easier to control. Are you getting the same vibe?
I don't know what created the universe, and I believe, quite frankly, that my limited human intelligence and the limited human capabilities of my species will never come to any definitive answer as to how the universe was created. It's one of those mysteries, and c'est la vie.
So just stop looking for the truth. Just believe whatever you want, whatever makes you feel good, because while he's better than you, he's just as lazy.
But I don't believe in God, and yet I would never strip that belief away from anybody.
Even though religion is demonstrably damaging to the planet, because as you keep demonstrating, it's all about you, you shallow prick.
Even if my religious upbringing had been damaging to me, it wasn't, by the way. I had a lackadaisical kind of Roman Catholic upbringing, and my family was not particularly religious. I was never religious myself, and I just, the idea of God was never like a big deal.
So, you don't have the slightest clue what damage religion can cause because you've never experienced it, and everyone else is just like you, right? I mean, those graveyards full of children in Oregon because their religious parents refused to provide medical care for easily treatable conditions. They didn't suffer because of religion, did they? Nor gay kids who learn to hate themselves and who they are because of some ridiculous book of mythology tells them something's wrong with them. Or, little Muslim girls and Jewish boys who get parts of their bodies surgically removed because of their religion. Nope, everybody has a nice, hardly religious at all upbringing, just like you.
And so today, as a grown man of 50, or nearly 50, I just don't believe in God, and that's that, right?
Yeah, but you're not the only one out there, and the highly religious vote and raise the next generation of children to believe the same mind poison that they do. Religion has a negative impact on society, whether you want to admit it or not.
But you see, I would never strip away that comfort from somebody else.
no matter what harm they're doing, because he's stupid that way, I guess.
I've met a lot of people who are religious, some of them deeply religious. And their religion and their belief in God gives them a sense of purpose, especially if perhaps their lives are not as happy as they wish they had been.
Too bad. So sad. And you know why a lot of these people's lives suck? Because of their religions. Because they're being held to impossible standards that they cannot possibly achieve. Because they're being threatened by an imaginary man in the sky that if they don't behave in such and such a way, that if they don't believe exactly the right things and perform exactly the right rituals, that they will be tortured forever in a fiery hell. So they oppose legitimate medical research, they fight against education, they fight against equality, they fight against other religions because they think their imaginary friends told them to. And you're defending this.
Especially if perhaps their life is filled with defeat and setbacks.
Which, if they just stop sitting on their asses in a church and go actually work, they could overcome. But no, God will provide. And it's funny that for all the people who believe God will provide, God never provides.
What good would it be for me to strip away their belief? What kind of an asshole would I be?
You could actually help them deal with reality as it is, to stop throwing their time and money away to the empty promises of the church, to stop believing silly nonsense, and actually make their own lives better. You can stop them from hating other people for no reason at all. You can stop them from hurting others for no reason at all. You can stop the oppressive abuses in the Middle East and the Deep South. You can get rid of the Phelps clan and the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, if you don't do that, you're an asshole. You are contributing to the ongoing failures and fanaticism of religion.
How lacking in compassion would I be to go up to somebody who is a believer and rub their nose in their ignorance and say, look how stupid you are. What a moron, what an idiot you are to believe in God, in this big white guy up in the sky. How stupid of you.
Big white guy, huh? There's that idiotic liberalism again. But how lacking in compassion could you be to let someone continue to squander their life in pursuit of a lie, to continue to wallow in ignorance when they could have intellect? You have no intellectual integrity, or let's be honest, no integrity whatsoever. You are a fucking idiot.
What kind of an asshole would I be if I acted that way? And to what purpose?
Oh, I don't know. To improve the lot and life of every single human being on the planet, maybe? Because I don't care how much hope and comfort you get from religion. It's all false hope, and it's empty comfort. If there's no food on your table today, all the prayer in the world won't put food on your table tomorrow. People wasting their lives with their noses in a religious book are losing the opportunity to actually learn something useful, to actually improve themselves in a demonstrable way. Spending your time talking to yourself doesn't help anyone. Only a complete jackass would believe that.
What would be the point of me acting this way towards somebody who holds a belief that is, for the most part, at least Christians and Jews, harmless? The belief in God, it doesn't harm anybody, and it gives a little bit of comfort to people whose lives are not so fortunate as my own.
Funny how he purposely excludes Islam there. I think he knows even he can't defend Islam as harmless. But Christianity and Judaism, they're not harmless either. I mean, I've already talked about those dead Christian kids whose parents refused to give them medical treatment, but you can go look at Christianity gone wild in places in Africa, like the Central African Republic, where Christian militias are every bit as deadly as ISIS. It's not hard at all to find stories about religious violence. Christian on Muslim violence, Muslim on Christian violence, Jewish on Muslim violence, Buddhist on Muslim violence, Christian on atheist violence, Muslim on atheist violence, all kinds of people killing other people in the name of some imaginary man in the sky. And apparently, this guy thinks that's a good thing.
I've never understood atheists who go around belittling people who believe in God. I've never understood atheists because so many of the problems of their lives could be solved by religion, by going to church.
No, they couldn't. But notice he's about to engage in more "I'm better than you are" nonsense by casting atheists as a bunch of pathetic losers. Now remember, he's an atheist, but he's better than you.
I mean, I know so many atheists, young men who are self-consciously atheist, right? And they're very lonely.
Wouldn't know. I don't think I've ever been lonely. Of course, I've been married for 25 years, so, you know.
And they live alone, and they have no friends, and they are online all the time.
Says the guy with a YouTube channel that puts out a video virtually every day.
Because that's the only social release that they can find. If they went to church, well, they'd meet very nice people, church-going folk.
Says who? Christian churches tend to be very insular. They're very much an in-group, out-group setting. They're not going to be accepting of people who don't fit into their club. You're not going to walk into a church, say you're an atheist, and expect to be accepted.
And, you know, in church mixers, they'd meet some nice girl. Maybe not a supermodel and maybe not very sophisticated, but a decent person.
Because the religious aren't nearly as good as you are. This guy's a real prick, isn't he?
A person who'd have her priorities on straight, who'd be thinking of having a family and having children and building a loving and comforting and cozy home. And what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, nothing if that's what both parties want. But it's really hard to have a long-term relationship with someone who has fundamentally different beliefs than you do. So what he's really saying is to throw away your rational mind, buy into religion, or at least pretend to buy into religion, so you can get laid. You know, what the fuck? It's not like you have to be honest or anything. Sure, why not?
As I said, I myself am not religious. I don't believe in God. But I am extremely sympathetic towards those who are religious, who do believe in God.
Meaning you're an idiot. Because if you substitute any other irrational belief, would you be just as sympathetic? I mean, let's start off with Santa Claus, because that's where you started, and we'll go back there. If an adult were to strongly believe in Santa Claus, were to have their entire lives revolve around Santa Claus, who couldn't go 5 minutes without bringing up Santa Claus in a conversation, who actively tried to convert everyone they met to Santa Clausism, who couldn't hold a job and had to rely on charity because they believed so strongly that Santa Claus was going to bring them presents, would you be sympathetic towards them? Or would you think that they have a serious mental and emotional problem and need serious psychological help?
Because what they do, their belief, their religion, gives comfort. What's wrong with that?
Empty comfort is not comfort. It's delusion. Delusion is insanity. You want people to be insane. You're comfortable having insane people in your midst. Well, probably not in your midst, because I'm sure you're too good to associate with the little religious people, aren't you?
What's wrong with a little comfort? A little lie, perhaps, an untruth that fills their life with joy and meaning and purpose. Even very humble lives with very little to look forward to.
Which could be vastly improved if they would just learn that they can't rely on an imaginary man in the sky, that they have to step up and make their own lives and the lives of their children better.
What's wrong with that?
Pretty much everything. Why are you so blind to reality?
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with allowing people to have their illusions about God or about whatever else, if it gives their lives a little bit of comfort. And there's nothing wrong with joining in that illusion, even if you don't really believe it.
You're just wrong. Because whether you like it or not, your beliefs inform your actions. There's no such thing as an innocent little lie. Because that lie that might give comfort might also make that person oppose equality for all. It might make them fight against legitimate medical research. It might make them abuse their children in the name of an imaginary god. In extreme cases, it might make them kill heretics that don't share their faith. Lies are not harmless. Lies are not innocent. You are a moron.
Because I certainly don't believe in Santa Claus, but when I'm talking to my daughter, I most certainly believe. Okay? I certainly believe because it gives her joy.
Because you benefit from the lie you are telling her. Because you refuse to see the potential harm down the road that can come from your lie. Because you, my friend, are a complete asshole.
And for the time that I indulge in that illusion of Santa Claus, I myself feel joy.
You're self-satisfied because you have all the power, because you can just sit there and chuckle, knowing that you're far better than the little peons who believe your lies and do your bidding.
I feel that joy and that anticipation of the big white guy with a big white beard who'll come down from the sky in his reindeer, sled and leave presents. Of course he doesn't exist, but so what? The happiness and joy and comfort are enough.
Not when it comes to adults believing things for which there is no evidence and acting on those beliefs to harm themselves, to harm their children, to harm others, and to harm society as a whole. It isn't acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable for people to take delusions and act out on them. But our accommodationist here, he can't think rationally about any of this. It's all feeling and no intellect. The apparent air of inherent superiority that he spews is laughable at best. Let the little people believe what they want. I'll just sit up here in my ivory tower and pontificate to the inferior because I'm so much better than they are. Yeah, in a pig's eye. But that's exactly why I hate accommodationists so much, because not only do they know better, they don't care. So long as it keeps the little people quiet and out of their hair, so what? They can just turn a blind eye to the harm that religion does and only focus on what they interpret to be the good things. But there aren't any good things. As I've always said, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, demonstrably true that religion can give the world that cannot be achieved as well or better through purely secular means. Religion is the opiate of the masses. It's the pacifier of the ignorant. But when you're a really shitty parent, and let's be honest, a really shitty person, you really couldn't care less about reality, could you? You couldn't care less about society. You couldn't care less about people. You only care about yourself. And that's clearly on display here.